When we recount the history of life on Earth, we have a tendency to focus on the titans. We obsess over the Tyrannosaurus rex, the 9-ton king of the Cretaceous. We marvel at the megalodon, the shark that could swallow a car. We look at the woolly mammoth and see a tragic, furry mirror of ourselves. In our collective imagination, size and strength are the ultimate markers of evolutionary success. We believe that to be a winner in the game of life, you must be a giant. But if the true metric of success is longevity, if the goal of the game is simply to refuse to leave the table, then these giants are mere amateurs. The dinosaurs reigned for about 165 million years. Humans have been here for a blink of an eye, perhaps 300,000 years. Long before the first dinosaur hatched from its egg, long before the first tree took root in the soil, and long before the first shark tasted blood, the oceans were ruled by an empire that lasted for a staggering 270 million years. They survived ice ages that turned the planet into a snowball. They endured meteoric impacts. They weathered volcanic events that poisoned the sky. They walked through the fires of 2 global mass extinctions and kept going. They are the Trilobites. For decades, they have been dismissed as boring sea bugs, the paperweights of the fossil world found in every museum gift shop. But this reputation is a profound injustice. To look at a trilobite is to look at a creature of terrifying sophistication. They were the first organisms to truly see the world. They were the masters of adaptation, the armored knights of the primordial seas. Their story is not just a footnote in the history of life. It is the main chapter. It is the story of how life learned to see, how it learned to defend itself, and ultimately, how even the most perfect design can eventually face a storm it cannot weather. To understand the dominance of the trilobite, we must travel back to the dawn of complex life, the Cambrian explosion, roughly 521 million years ago. The oceans of this era were a murky, chaotic soup of potential. For millions of years, life had been soft, squishy, and largely blind. Creatures drifted in the currents, navigating by chemical trails and touch, living in a world of eternal darkness. And then, the trilobites switched on the lights. Trilobites developed one of the most advanced visual systems in the history of the planet, and they did it first. While other animals were still bumping into one another in the dark, the trilobite evolved eyes. But these were not the soft, gelatinous eyes of a human or a fish. These eyes were made of rock. Specifically, the lenses of a trilobite's eye were crafted from single, perfect crystals of calcite, the same mineral that makes up limestone and chalk. If you were to hold a trilobite fossil today and look into its eyes, you would be looking at the same crystal lenses that stared out at a Cambrian reef 500 million years ago. They are preserved perfectly because they are stone. This innovation presented a massive physics problem. Calcite is a rigid mineral. Unlike the human lens, it cannot change shape to focus. Furthermore, light traveling through a curved calcite crystal splits into 2 rays, creating a double image. To solve this, the trilobite evolved a sophisticated internal structure known as a doublet lens. They layered different types of material within the crystal to correct the refraction of light, creating a sharp, single image. This is a complex optical principle that human scientists like René Descartes and Christian Huygens only figured out in the 17th century. The trilobites solved it mathematically and biologically 500 million years earlier. With these crystal eyes, the trilobite became the first active observer of our planet. Some species evolved eyes on stalks to peer over the mud. Others, like the Urbinoculae, evolved vast wraparound eyes with a brim-like shade above them to block out the glare of the sun. effectively inventing sunglasses eons before humanity existed. This vision was their superpower. It allowed them to spot food, find mates, and, most importantly, see the shadows of the nightmares that were beginning to evolve around them. The name trilobite literally means three-lobed, referring to the three distinct vertical sections of their body. It is a simple, elegant body plan. But if you think all trilobites look the same, you would be mistaken. This basic blueprint, a hard exoskeleton made of calcite jointed legs and a segmented body, was so versatile that it allowed them to radiate into over 20,000 distinct species. Nature took this one design and remixed it endlessly to fill every single niche in the ocean. There were trilobites the size of a fingernail, scavenging in the microbial mats. There were giants, like Isotellus rex, which grew to nearly a meter in length, dominating the seafloor like armored hovercrafts. There were smooth, hydrodynamic species that swam through the water column like jet fighters. There were blind, shovel-nosed species that plowed through the mud of the deep abyss. And then there were the punks of the Paleozoic. As the oceans became more dangerous, specifically with the rise of the terrifying super-predator Anomalocaris, trilobites responded with a riot of defensive architecture. Some evolved long, trident-like forks on their heads to joust with rivals or deter attackers. Others covered themselves in forests of sharp, calcite spines that made them impossible to swallow. They also mastered the art of enrollment. Much like a modern pill bug or armadillo, a trilobite could curl its body into a tight, impenetrable ball. This allowed them to protect their soft underbelly and legs, presenting nothing but hard, calcified armor to a predator. This mechanism was so effective that we find thousands of fossils in this enrolled position, animals that died trying to protect themselves from a threat that eventually buried them. This adaptability allowed them to colonize every corner of the ocean. From the sunlit reefs to the crushing pressures of the abyss, there was no place on Earth free from the scuttling of trilobite legs. They were the undisputed masters of their domain. The true test of a dynasty is not how it lives in times of plenty, but how it survives disaster. And the trilobites faced the absolute worst the universe could throw at them. Their first great test came 444 million years ago, the Ordovician-Silurian extinction. This was the second largest extinction event in Earth's history. The cause was a sudden, severe ice age. A massive continent, Gondwana, drifted over the South Pole, causing global temperatures to plummet. Vast amounts of the planet's water were locked up in continental glaciers. This caused sea levels to drop dramatically, draining the shallow, warm continental shelves where the vast majority of trilobites lived. Their cities were literally dried out. Then, as the climate swung back and the ice melted, the oceans were flooded with fresh water and decaying organic matter, creating anoxic dead zones where no oxygen existed. It was a massacre. Approximately 85% of all marine species vanished. The complex, specialized trilobite families that relied on specific reef environments were wiped out. The giants fell. The elaborate, spiny forms suffered heavy losses. But the trilobites did not vanish. The survivors were the generalists, the scrappy species that lived in deeper, cooler waters and were accustomed to hardship. They squeezed through the bottleneck of extinction. As the world warmed again in the Silurian period, these survivors emerged from the deep. They repopulated the empty world, evolving new forms to fill the void left by their fallen cousins. They had looked extinction in the face and blinked with their crystal eyes, refusing to die. For all their resilience, the trilobites had a fatal flaw. They were designed for a world of soft-bodied invertebrates. Their armor was designed to stop the grasping appendages of things like Anomalocaris. But the world was changing. A new player had entered the game, one that would change the rules of engagement forever: the fish. In the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fish, vertebrates evolved jaws, and not just any jaws. Placoderms, like the monstrous Dunkleosteus, evolved self-sharpening bone plates that functioned like industrial guillotines. These predators could deliver bite forces that rivaled the T-Rex. This changed the balance of power. The Trilobites' calcite armor, which had protected them for millions of years, was useless against the crushing power of a jawed vertebrate. Their hard shells, once a fortress, became a dinner plate. The crunch of trilobite shells likely became a common sound on the Devonian reefs. The trilobites tried to adapt. They burrowed deeper into the mud to hide. They became smaller and more elusive. Some evolved even thicker spines. But they were fighting a losing war against a superior biological design. The fish were faster, smarter, and possessed internal skeletons that allowed for greater growth and agility. The bug of the sea was slowly being replaced by the fish of the sea. Millions of years later, disaster struck again. The late Devonian extinction, occurring about 375 million years ago, was not a single event, but a prolonged series of pulses that hammered the biosphere for millions of years. The causes were complex, involving volcanic activity, asteroid impacts, and the rise of land plants which changed the chemical balance of the oceans, leading to widespread anoxia. The magnificent coral reefs of the time, the great cities of the Paleozoic, were decimated. Once again, the Trilobite Empire teetered on the brink. Their diversity crashed. The wild, spiny, flamboyant forms that had characterized their history mostly disappeared. The vast majority of their lineages were severed. But incredibly, one single order, the Proetida, managed to squeeze through the cracks. These were not the giants or the monsters of the past. They were small, simple, and unspecialized trilobites. But they were survivors. They carried the torch of their ancestors into the Carboniferous period. While they no longer ruled the world, they persisted. They lived in the shadows of the giant sharks and amphibians, a remnant of a bygone age, refusing to let their story end. By the Permian period, the trilobites were a shadow of their former glory. Only a few families of the order Proetida remained. They were the last of the Mohicans, living quietly in the background of a vibrant, dangerous ecosystem. They had survived for 270 million years. They had seen continents collide and tear apart. They had seen the sky turn black and the oceans turn to ice. And then, 252 million years ago, the trap snapped shut. The Permian-Triassic extinction, known to science as the Great Dying, began. It was the single most catastrophic event in the history of life on Earth. In what is now Siberia, the Earth tore open. The Siberian Traps, a continental-sized volcanic region, erupted continuously for thousands of years. It spewed enough lava to cover the entire United States in molten rock. But the lava was not the killer. The killer was the gas. The eruption released trillions of tons of carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. Global temperatures skyrocketed. The planet became a greenhouse oven. The oceans, absorbing this carbon, turned into hot, acidic, oxygen-starved bathtubs. The acidification of the ocean was the final nail in the coffin. Trilobites relied on calcium carbonate to build their shells and their crystal eyes. As the oceans became acidic, it became chemically impossible for them to build their bodies. Their armor dissolved. Their eyes failed. The food web collapsed completely. 96% of all marine life died. This time, there was no escape. The deep waters were toxic. The shallow waters were hot and acidic. The few remaining trilobites, already pressured by predators and competition, could not endure the total collapse of the biosphere. After 270 million years of struggle, adaptation, and survival, the last trilobite curled up into a ball one final time and was buried by the silt of a dying world. The dynasty had finally ended. It is easy to look at the extinction of the trilobite and see it as a failure. But that is a mistake born of our own insecurity. To exist for 270 million years is a triumph that mammals, and certainly humans, can only dream of. We often think of the Earth as ours, but if you were to look at the timeline of life, Earth has been a planet of the trilobites for far longer than it has been a planet of the apes. They were the pioneers. They were the creatures that figured out how to see, how to build armor, how to hunt, and how to survive. They laid the groundwork for the complex ecosystems we see today. Their fossilized bodies form the very limestone of the buildings we live in. We literally walk on their bones. They are not just extinct bugs. They are the bedrock of complex life on Earth. The story of the trilobite teaches us a humbling lesson about the nature of success. Evolution does not care about perfection. It cares about adaptability. The trilobites were perfect for their time, but their time eventually ran out. They demonstrate that no empire lasts forever. Dominance is temporary. They also teach us about the cost of specialization. The very things that made them successful, their heavy armor, their specific reef habitats, eventually became their undoing when the rules of the game changed. The fish, with their internal skeletons and jaws, represented a new technological paradigm that the trilobite could not match. It is a lesson that applies to biology, to technology, and to civilizations. So the next time you walk through a natural history museum and see a trilobite fossil behind glass, do not just walk past it. Do not see it as a primitive, simple stone bug. Stop and look into those eyes. Look into those crystal lenses that have not blinked in 500 million years. You are looking at a veteran of 2 apocalypses. You are looking at a member of a dynasty that held the throne of Earth for longer than the dinosaurs and mammals combined. You are looking at the first creature that ever had the audacity to open its eyes and look back at the universe. They are gone now, replaced by the crabs and the lobsters and the fish. But in the silent record of the rocks, the trilobite remains the ultimate survivor, a testament to the tenacity of life, and a reminder that we are all just passing through their world. If you found this journey into the deep time of our oceans fascinating, make sure to subscribe to the Extinct Echoes. We have many more stories of the lost worlds beneath our feet. And let us know in the comments. If you could travel back to one prehistoric ocean to see a creature alive, would you choose the terrifying Dunkleosteus or the alien beauty of a spiny trilobite?